Hello, beautiful soul. I'm Aurora, and welcome to Twin Flame Journey, a space where we explore the deeper meaning behind soul connections, divine timing, and the path that leads two hearts back to union. If you've been feeling the signs, you're in the right place.
Most people think he comes back because he finally realizes her value. I don't think that's what happens. I think he comes back because the version of her that kept carrying the connection is gone. And by the time he notices that, it's already too late. Because while everyone focuses on the moment she leaves, almost nobody talks about the months before that. The gradual exhaustion, the messages she rewrote 3 times, the conversations she kept trying to save, the way she slowly started asking for less because asking for more kept hurting. And here's the uncomfortable part. A lot of men don't feel the loss when she's still there. They feel it when she's emotionally gone, when the text messages become shorter, when the reactions disappear, when the attention they thought would always be available suddenly isn't. Not because she's playing games, not because she's trying to teach him a lesson, but because she's genuinely tired. And for some reason, that's when reality finally starts catching up to him. Not when she loved him, when she stopped carrying him. And I've seen this happen more times than I can count. I've lived parts of it myself. The strange delay between losing someone and actually feeling the loss. The way regret sometimes arrives months late. The way the heart notices what the ego spent months avoiding. So, tonight, I want to talk about something most people misunderstand. Why he often returns only after losing her energy. And why that realization is usually much messier, much less noble, and much more human than people want to admit. I think one of the most misunderstood things about losing someone is that the loss usually starts long before either person realizes it. Not the breakup. Not the final conversation. Not the moment somebody says, "I can't do this anymore." I'm talking about something quieter than that. The invisible work. The emotional weight that one person has been carrying for so long that neither of them fully sees it anymore. And if I'm being honest, sometimes he doesn't notice because she's made it look effortless. Not intentionally. Just because that's what happens when somebody loves you. They make difficult things look natural. They remember things without announcing it. They reach out without keeping score. They repair little cracks before anyone else notices they're there. And after enough time, what was once appreciated becomes expected. Not out of cruelty, out of familiarity. There's a difference. I remember watching this happen once. Or maybe watching isn't the right word. Maybe I should say living close enough to it that it became impossible to ignore. Every morning, she sent a message first. Not always something dramatic. Sometimes it was just, "Hope your meeting goes well." Or, "Don't forget your appointment." Or, "Drive safe." Tiny things. The kind of things that don't seem important when they're happening. The kind of things that suddenly feel enormous once they're gone. And the strange thing was, he appreciated it. At least I think he did. But appreciation and awareness are always the same thing. You can appreciate sunlight without noticing it. You can appreciate oxygen without thinking about it. You can appreciate someone's emotional presence while completely failing to understand how much effort it takes to maintain. And that's where things start getting dangerous. Not because anyone is trying to hurt anyone. Because comfort slowly erases visibility. He gets used to her checking in. Used to her remembering. Used to her reaching out after arguments. Used to her being the first one to soften. The first one to reconnect. The first one to ask, "Are we okay?" And eventually something strange happens. The relationship begins operating on energy that only one person is actively generating. Not entirely, but enough. Enough that if she stopped, everything would feel different. The problem is nobody notices while she's still doing it. I think about one particular memory a lot. A stupid memory, honestly. The kind that shouldn't matter. They had a disagreement. Nothing major. One of those arguments that wasn't really about the thing they were arguing about. A delayed text. A misunderstood comment. Something small. The kind of conflict couples forget a month later. He stopped responding. Not dramatically. Not with some grand declaration. He just disappeared into himself. Went quiet. Watched television. Scrawled his phone. Convinced himself he needed time. And maybe he did. But here's what I remember. Hours passed. Then she reached out. Again. Not because she was wrong. Not because she enjoyed being the peacemaker. Because she cared more about connection than being right. At least that day. And I remember thinking, what would happen if she didn't? What if she just sat back and waited? Would he notice? Would he reach for her? Or would the silence simply continue? The uncomfortable truth is that a lot of people don't know how much emotional momentum their relationships are running on until the person creating it becomes exhausted. Because emotional labor is invisible when it's functioning. You only notice the electricity when the lights go out. Before that, everything just feels normal. That's why these stories are so confusing when people look back. Because from the outside, it seems sudden. He came back after she left. He didn't appreciate her until she was gone. He only realized when he lost her. Maybe. But that's not the whole story. Sometimes he was losing pieces of her for months. He just didn't understand what he was looking at. Because she was getting quieter. Not angry. Tired. There's a difference. Anger still reaches toward you. Exhaustion starts letting go. Slowly. Almost invisibly. And exhaustion is hard to recognize because it doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like shorter responses. Sometimes it looks like no longer bringing up concerns. Sometimes it looks like accepting behavior she would have questioned 6 months earlier. And people misread that. God, people misread that all the time. They think things are improving. They think, wow, she's not upset anymore. Meanwhile, she's sitting alone at night deciding whether another conversation is even worth having. That's not peace. That's depletion. But from his perspective, everything feels easier. The arguments decrease. The emotional pressure decreases. The requests decrease. The expectations decrease. And at first, that feels good. It really does. That's the part nobody likes admitting. Sometimes the early stages of emotional withdrawal feel like relief to the person who's been avoiding intimacy. Because now nobody's asking difficult questions. Nobody's asking where this is going. Nobody's asking for deeper honesty. Nobody's asking for emotional presence. The room gets quieter. The phone gets quieter. The relationship gets quieter. And he mistakes the quiet for stability. I've done versions of this myself. Not intentionally. Not maliciously. Just humanly. Thinking everything was fine because nobody was complaining anymore. Thinking the tension had disappeared. Not realizing the tension hadn't disappeared. The person carrying it had simply stopped sharing it. That's very different. And here's where things become painful. Because often the woman doesn't even announce that she's running out of energy. At least not in the way people imagine. She doesn't wake up one morning and decide she's done. Usually she's been trying for a long time. Trying in dozens of small ways nobody sees. Trying through conversations. Trying through patience. Trying through understanding. Trying through giving the benefit of the doubt. Trying through waiting. And waiting. And waiting. until one day something inside her begins changing. Not dramatically, not even consciously at first. She sends one less message, then another. She stops rewriting paragraphs before sending them, stops checking whether he saw the story she posted, stops wondering why he sounded distant yesterday, stops trying to solve every emotional gap by herself. And what makes this so heartbreaking is that these changes are often healthy. They're signs that she's protecting herself, but to someone who has grown and accustomed to receiving that energy, the absence won't be understood immediately, because habits die slowly, and dependence hides itself well. He still wakes up expecting the same warmth, the same attention, the same emotional availability, the same safety, only now it's arriving in smaller amounts. And he doesn't know why, or maybe he notices, just not deeply enough. Not yet. There is a moment I've heard described so many times that it almost sounds universal. He looks at his phone, no message, and for a second he feels nothing. Maybe mild curiosity, maybe relief, maybe freedom. Then he puts the phone down, keeps living, keeps working, keeps distracting himself. Days pass, weeks pass, and still he doesn't fully understand what is happening, because what he's losing isn't her presence yet. It's her energy, and those aren't the same thing. Presence is easy to measure. Energy isn't. Presence is whether someone is there. Energy is whether they're still reaching for you, whether they're still carrying hope, whether they're still investing emotionally, whether they're still trying. And by the time he notices that part disappearing, the process has usually been happening for much longer than he realizes. That's why these stories rarely begin where people think they do. They don't begin with a goodbye. They begin in ordinary moments. A text left unanswered, an apology postponed, a conversation avoided, a hand not reached for, a vulnerability ignored. Tiny moments, tiny decisions, tiny absences, the kind that don't feel important individually, until one day they become the entire story. And the strangest part, if you asked him during that period whether he cared about her, he would probably say yes, because he did. That's what makes this complicated. He cared. He just wasn't paying attention. And unfortunately, those aren't always the same thing. Sometimes love exists, and awareness doesn't. Sometimes affection exists, and effort doesn't. Sometimes someone assumes there will always be another conversation, another chance, another weekend, another opportunity to show up differently, until eventually there isn't. And that's the part nobody notices while it's happening. Not the loss itself, the slow exhaustion that comes before it, the invisible emotional labor, the constant reaching, the energy that quietly held everything together. Because when it's still there, it feels ordinary. Only later does he realize it was never ordinary at all. I used to think that when someone said, "I need space," they knew exactly what they meant. Now I'm not so sure. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they genuinely need room to think, room to breathe, room to calm down. But sometimes, if we're being painfully honest, "I need space" is just the cleanest explanation available for feelings we don't know how to describe, especially for men. And before anyone gets defensive, I'm not saying this as criticism. I'm saying it because I've watched it happen. I've lived parts of it. I've been the person saying one thing while something much messier was happening underneath. Because the truth is, there are moments when a man genuinely wants closeness and simultaneously feels trapped by it. Not because the woman is controlling, Not because she's asking for too much. Not because anything is objectively wrong. Sometimes the intimacy itself becomes overwhelming. Not the relationship. The reality of being seen. And those are very different things. I've noticed that people often imagine emotional avoidance as coldness. Like some calculated decision. Like he wakes up one morning and decides not to care. Most of the time it doesn't look like that. Most of the time it looks confused, inconsistent, contradictory. He misses her all day, then takes 6 hours to answer her text. He thinks about calling her, then doesn't. He stares at her name on his phone, then locks the screen, then picks it up again 10 minutes later, then puts it down. Again. It's ridiculous, and yet incredibly human. I remember a conversation someone told me about years ago. She asked him a simple question. Why do you pull away every time we get closer? And he paused. Not because he was hiding something, because he genuinely didn't know. That's the uncomfortable part. Sometimes the person doing the distancing can't explain it either. They just know that something starts happening inside them. The relationship gets deeper. The feelings become more real. The emotional stakes increase. And suddenly their body begins reacting before their mind has formed an explanation. The chest tightens. The desire to escape appears. They become restless, irritable, distracted, not because love disappeared, because vulnerability arrived, and vulnerability feels very different. The strange thing about emotional closeness is that it asks for things many people were never taught how to give. Consistency, presence, honesty, dependability, not perfection, just participation. But participation becomes difficult when part of you is still trying to protect yourself from things that happened long before this relationship ever existed. And sometimes he knows that's happening, at least partially. But knowing doesn't automatically create change. That's another truth people don't talk about enough. Awareness and action are not the same thing. A man can recognize his behavior and still repeat it. A man can understand what he's doing and still feel unable to stop. I've watched people explain their own patterns perfectly, then continue living them. Not because they're manipulative, because human beings are weird, especially when emotions get involved. I remember one story in particular. A man kept telling everyone he needed freedom. That was his word. Freedom. He said relationships made him feel pressured, restricted, responsible for another person's feelings. He talked about independence constantly. So eventually she stepped back, gave him the freedom he said he wanted. And for about 2 weeks he seemed relieved. Maybe even longer. The pressure was gone. The difficult conversations stopped. The emotional demands disappeared. No one was asking where things were headed. No one was asking why he seemed distant. No one was asking him to explain himself. And at first, he felt lighter. Then something strange happened. The relief started turning into something else. He'd finish work and instinctively reach for his phone. Nothing. He'd see a funny video. Nobody to send it to. He'd hear something happen during his day and think, I should tell her. Then remember, he was the one who wanted space. Wasn't he? And that's where things become emotionally complicated. Because sometimes space gives clarity. And sometimes space removes the distraction that was helping you avoid your feelings. There's a difference. One night he sat in his car after work, engine off, just sitting there, staring through the windshield, the kind of exhausted silence that feels heavier than it should. His phone was on the passenger seat. He picked it up, opened her conversation, Re-old messages. Closed it. Opened it again. Typed, "Hey." Deleted it. Locked the screen. And locked it. Read the messages again. It sounds ridiculous when you describe it out loud, but people do things like this every day. The heart moves in one direction, the fear moves in another, and the person gets stuck somewhere in the middle. I think that's what a lot of emotional withdrawal actually looks like. Not certainty, conflict, a private tug of war nobody else can see. Part of him wants connection. Part of him wants distance. Part of him wants reassurance. Part of him wants complete independence. Part of him wants her to stay. Part of him feels overwhelmed when she does. And if you've never experienced that contradiction, it probably sounds irrational. Because it is irrational. Human emotions often are. At some point, the internal conversation starts sounding like this. I need space. Do you? Double quotes. Kind of. From her. No. Then from what? Silence. Eventually the answer arrives. What I feel when I'm with her. And that's a much harder thing to admit. Because now we're not talking about her behavior anymore. We're talking about his emotional experience. The way intimacy activates fears he doesn't fully understand. The way closeness exposes uncertainty. The way being loved creates responsibilities he doesn't always feel prepared for. Sometimes he doesn't fear losing her. He fears needing her. There's a difference. And nobody likes talking about that. Especially men. Because needing someone feels dangerous when you've spent years convincing yourself that independence is strength. So instead of saying, "I'm scared of how important you've become to me," he says, "I've just been busy lately." Instead of saying, "I'm overwhelmed by how real this feels," he says, "I need some space." Instead of saying, "I don't know how to hold all these emotions," he disappears into work, the gym, video games, friends, projects, anything that gives the mind somewhere else to go. And here's the thing, those distractions often work. Temporarily. That's why people keep using them. A man can stay busy enough to avoid feeling something for weeks, months, sometimes, maybe longer. But eventually life creates little openings, tiny cracks, moments where the distraction stops working. A quiet drive home, a Sunday afternoon, an empty apartment, a random memory, a song, a smell, a photograph, and suddenly everything he's been out running catches up. Not dramatically, just enough to make him uncomfortable. Just enough to make him reach for his phone. Just enough to make him wonder whether distance was actually solving anything. The irony is that many men don't pull away because they feel nothing. They pull away because they feel too much and don't know what to do with it. That doesn't excuse the behavior. It doesn't make the consequences disappear. But it explains why the contradiction exists. Why he can miss her and avoid her, want her and resent the vulnerability, feel relief and grief at the same time. Because human beings are fully capable of holding opposing emotions simultaneously. We do it constantly, especially when love becomes real. And that's what nobody tells you. The deeper the connection becomes, the less logical people often behave. Not more logical, less. Because now there's something meaningful at stake. Now there is something to lose. Now there is something capable of hurting them. And that's usually where the distancing begins. Not when feelings disappear. When feelings become impossible to ignore. Which is why I need space is often only part of the truth. The visible part. The socially acceptable part. The easy to explain part. Beneath it, there's usually something far less polished. something harder to admit, something emotionally awkward, something that sounds more like, "I care about you more than I expected. I don't know what to do with that. I'm afraid of disappointing you. I'm afraid you'll eventually leave. I'm afraid I'll eventually leave. I'm afraid this matters." And sometimes, the most painful truth of all is that he doesn't fully understand any of that until much later, long after the words have been spoken, long after the distance has been created, long after the woman standing in front of him has started running out of energy trying to understand what was never fully explained. The strange thing about losing someone emotionally is that it rarely looks like leaving, at least not at first. Nobody packs a suitcase. Nobody slams a door. Nobody makes some dramatic speech about being done. Most of the time, the disappearance happens quietly. So quietly that the person watching it unfold doesn't even realize it's happening. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because people are trained to notice explosions. They're not trained to notice fading. Explosions demand attention. Fading asks for observation. And observation is harder, especially when you're distracted, especially when you're busy, especially when part of you has gotten comfortable assuming she'll always be there. I remember hearing someone describe it this way once. He said, "I thought we were getting better." That sentence stayed with me, because when he explained what he meant, it became painfully obvious that they weren't getting better at all. The arguments had decreased. The emotional conversations had decreased. The tension had decreased. Everything felt calmer, and he interpreted calmness as improvement. But calmness and connection are not the same thing. Sometimes they're opposites. Sometimes calmness is simply what happens when one person stops fighting for something. And that's a difficult thing to recognize while you're living inside it. Because from his perspective, the relationship still exists. She's still answering, still showing up, still present, technically, but something underneath has started changing. Something less visible. The emotional current is weakening, and currents are hard to measure when you've never paid attention to them before. Maybe she used to send 3 messages during the day. Now she sends 1. Maybe she used to tell him about every little thing that happened. Now she keeps most of it to herself. Maybe she used to send voice notes while walking through a grocery store, talking about absolutely nothing. The annoying customer, the song playing overhead, the weird shape of a tomato she found, the pointless details that people only share when they feel emotionally connected. Now she doesn't. Not because she's angry. She's just tired. There's a difference. Anger still wants to be heard. Exhaustion starts conserving energy. And that's the stage many people completely misunderstand. Because when someone is angry, you know where you stand. They tell you, maybe loudly, maybe imperfectly, but they tell you. Exhaustion is quieter. Exhaustion doesn't argue. Exhaustion stops expecting. And honestly, that can look a lot like peace from the outside. At first, I think that's why so many men miss what's happening. Not because they're stupid. Not because they're heartless. Because the signs are subtle. And because the change often benefits them temporarily. Nobody enjoys feeling criticized. Nobody enjoys difficult conversations. Nobody enjoys being asked uncomfortable questions. So when those things start disappearing, part of him feels relieved. The relationship feels easier, lighter, less complicated, and he doesn't stop to ask why. I remember a woman describing the final months before she emotionally detached. She said something that hit me hard. She said, "The saddest part was that I stopped bringing things up. Not because the problems disappeared, because she no longer believed discussing them would change anything. That sentence wrecked me a little, because that's such a specific kind of heartbreak. Not fighting because everything is okay. Not fighting because you've quietly lost faith. And here's the thing. Most men don't recognize that moment when it happens, because she doesn't announce it. She doesn't send a formal notice. She doesn't say, "Just so you know, I'm beginning to emotionally withdraw." Life doesn't work like that. Instead, she simply starts adapting. She becomes more self-contained, more independent, less emotionally available, not as a strategy, as survival. And survival rarely looks dramatic. Sometimes, it looks like going to bed without sending the text she spent months sending. Sometimes, it looks like no longer checking whether he got home safely. Sometimes, it looks like deciding not to share the thing that hurt her during the day. Not because she doesn't want comfort, because she's tired of reaching for it. The really painful part. He notices some of these changes. He just doesn't understand what they mean. He notices she isn't texting as much. He notices she seems different. He notices she's quieter. But he interprets those observations through the lens of his own experience. Maybe she's busy. Maybe she's stressed. Maybe she's distracted. Maybe she's just having a rough week. And sometimes those explanations are true, which makes it even harder to recognize the deeper shift. Because emotional withdrawal doesn't happen in a straight line. One day she seems distant. The next day she seems normal. One week she reconnects. The next week she disappears emotionally again. It's messy. Human emotions are rarely clean enough to provide obvious clues. People imagine detachment as a clear decision. Often it's not. Often it's 100 tiny disappointments accumulating over time. 1,000 moments where effort wasn't matched. 1,000 moments where vulnerability wasn't met. 1,000 moments where she chose understanding while secretly wishing she wouldn't have to. Until eventually something inside her begins changing. And she doesn't even realize it at first. She just knows she's tired. I think that's one of the saddest truths in relationships. Sometimes people don't stop loving. They stop hoping. And those are completely different losses. Love can survive disappointment for a long time. Hope struggles too. When hope begins fading, behavior changes. Not dramatically, subtly. The double texts disappear. The follow-up questions disappear. The emotional chasing disappears. The willingness to keep explaining disappears. And because these changes happen slowly, he adapts to them without fully noticing. Human beings adapt to almost everything. That's what we do. We normalize. We adjust. We absorb change until it becomes familiar. Which is exactly why he doesn't see what's happening. The new version becomes normal before he has time to compare it to the old one. Then one day somebody asks him, "How are things between you two?" And he says, "Good." Because from his perspective, nothing catastrophic has happened. No breakup. No major fight. No dramatic conflict. Everything looks stable. Meanwhile, she's sitting alone processing an entirely different reality. One where she has spent months grieving while still inside the relationship. That's another uncomfortable truth people rarely discuss. Sometimes one person starts mourning before the relationship actually ends. Not because they've stopped caring, because they've spent so much time confronting disappointment that the grieving process begins early. And the other person has no idea. Absolutely no idea. They're still operating from old assumptions. Still believing tomorrow will look like yesterday. Still believing she'll continue carrying the emotional weight she's always carried. Still believing there's more time, more conversations, more chances. more opportunities. There is a phrase I've heard repeatedly over the years, and every time I hear it, it sounds heartbreaking. I thought she was okay. Not because he didn't care, because he confused silence with contentment. And silence is one of the easiest things in the world to misinterpret, especially when you're benefiting from it. Especially when that silence means fewer difficult conversations. Especially when that silence allows you to avoid confronting things you've been avoiding. But silence has layers. Some silence is peaceful. Some silence is exhausted. Some silence is already halfway gone. And the difference isn't always obvious until much later. That's why the disappearance often goes unnoticed. Because she hasn't physically left. Not yet. She's still there. Still answering. Still smiling sometimes. Still participating. But her emotional investment is shrinking. Her expectations are shrinking. Her hope is shrinking. And none of those things make noise. That's what makes them so easy to miss. Then eventually there comes a moment. Not the final moment. Just a moment. A small one. He sends a message. She responds. The conversation ends. And something feels different. Not wrong. Just thinner. Like a song playing from another room. Like a familiar scent that's almost disappeared. Like warmth leaving a house after sunset. He notices it briefly, then ignores it. Because life is busy. Because work needs attention. Because distractions are available. Because uncertainty is uncomfortable. And because part of him genuinely believes everything will return to normal. What he doesn't realize is that this is the new normal. The old version is already disappearing. The woman who kept reaching, kept hoping, kept carrying, kept trying. She's becoming someone else now. Not colder, not crueler, just tired. And the most heartbreaking part of all, he often doesn't understand what he's losing until the process is almost complete. Not because he never cared, because the disappearance was gradual enough to feel invisible. Until suddenly, it isn't. Until one day the absence becomes too large to ignore. Until one day the emotional energy he took for granted is no longer there to hold everything together. And when that realization finally arrives, it feels sudden. But it wasn't sudden at all. It was happening right in front of him the entire time. He just didn't know what he was looking at. This is the part almost nobody talks about honestly, because it doesn't make people look good. It doesn't fit the romantic version of the story. It doesn't sound noble. And yet I've seen it happen over and over again. Sometimes the first thing he feels when her energy starts disappearing is relief. Not loss. Not panic. Relief. Even writing that feels uncomfortable. Because people want grief to arrive immediately. They want realization to happen the moment she stops trying. They want him to suddenly understand everything. But human beings rarely work that way. Especially when they've been avoiding emotions for a long time. Especially when intimacy has started feeling complicated. Especially when they've spent months feeling pressure they don't fully understand. When that pressure disappears, the nervous system often mistakes it for freedom. And that's where the misunderstanding begins. I remember hearing someone describe it in a way that stayed with me. He said, everything got easier. At least that's what he thought. No more long conversations about feelings. No more discussions that stretched late into the night. No more trying to explain why he seemed distant. No more emotional accountability. No more questions he didn't know how to answer. No more moments where he felt cornered by his own inability to communicate. Just quiet. Simple, clean quiet. And at first, that quiet felt good. Really good. That's the truth. For a while he slept better. His mind felt less crowded. His phone felt less demanding. His days felt lighter. The relationship felt easier. And because it felt easier, he assumed things were improving. People confuse comfort with health all the time. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we make. Something feels less stressful, so we assume it's better. But removing tension doesn't always solve a problem. Sometimes it simply removes the evidence that the problem exists. Imagine covering a warning light on a dashboard with tape. The light disappears. The engine problem doesn't. That's what can happen emotionally. The difficult conversations disappear. The discomfort disappears. The pressure disappears. But the underlying distance remains. In fact, it often grows. Because now nobody is talking about it anymore. And honestly, part of him likes that. Not because he's cruel. Not because he enjoys hurting her. Because human beings naturally move toward relief. That's what we do. If something feels easier, we tend to trust it. Even when we shouldn't. Especially when we shouldn't. I remember a man describing a period after a woman stopped pursuing him emotionally. He said it felt like someone had stopped knocking on his door. At first, he appreciated the silence. No interruptions. No demands. No difficult conversations. Then, a few weeks later, he realized something. Nobody was knocking because nobody was there anymore. And suddenly the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt empty. But that realization took time. Longer than he expected. Longer than she probably expected. That's another thing people rarely understand. Regret often moves slower than exhaustion. She's been carrying the emotional weight for months. He's only beginning to notice something feels different. They're living in completely different timelines. She's tired. He's relieved. She's grieving. He's relaxing. She's processing loss. He's enjoying the absence of pressure. And neither one fully understands what the other is experiencing. It's almost tragic when you think about it. Two people standing inside the same relationship, living completely different realities. I think about the little things, the ordinary moments, because that's usually where truth hides. Not in the dramatic scenes, in the everyday details. He gets home from work. Nobody is asking how his day went. And surprisingly, he likes it. For a while. He doesn't have to talk. Doesn't have to explain. Doesn't have to emotionally engage when he's tired. He can simply sit on the couch, turn on television, scroll through his phone, exist quietly, and for a few weeks that feels like exactly what he wanted. Space. Peace, freedom, whatever word he uses. The label doesn't matter. The feeling does. The feeling is relief. Temporary relief. And temporary relief can be dangerous because it feels convincing. It feels like proof. Proof that he made the right choice. Proof that distance was necessary. Proof that pulling away solved something. But relief is not always truth. Sometimes relief is just the absence of immediate discomfort. Those aren't the same thing. I've noticed something strange about avoidance. It often rewards itself in the beginning. You avoid the conversation. Immediate relief. You postpone the vulnerability. Immediate relief. You create distance. Immediate relief. The consequences arrive later, which is why the behavior keeps repeating. The reward comes now. The cost comes later. Human beings are terrible at calculating that trade, especially emotionally, especially when we're scared, especially when we don't understand ourselves. So he settles into the quiet, the new rhythm, the easier version. the less emotionally demanding version. And for a while, everything seems fine. Then tiny things start happening. Not dramatic things. Tiny things. The dangerous kind. The kind you can dismiss. The kind you can explain away. The kind that don't seem important until they start happening every day. He sees something funny during lunch. His first instinct is to send it to her. Then he doesn't. A few hours later, he sees something else. Same instinct. Same interruption. Same silence. He shrugs it off. Keeps moving. No big deal. Except it keeps happening. Again. And again. And again. The human brain is strange. Habits reveal attachment long before conscious awareness does. Before he misses her emotionally, he misses her behaviorally. His routines notice her absence before his heart admits it. His hand reaches for the phone. His mind remembers a conversation. His attention turns towards someone who isn't there. These moments are easy to ignore individually. Collectively, they become impossible. But he's not there yet. Not quite. At this stage, he's still negotiating with reality. Still telling himself everything is fine. Still believing the quiet means peace. I sometimes imagine those private moments nobody sees. The ones people never post online. The ones that never become relationship advice. Like standing in the kitchen at 11:30 at night. Opening the refrigerator. Not even hungry. Just restless. Looking at leftovers. Closing the door. Opening it again 2 minutes later. Because what you're actually searching for isn't food. It's distraction. Something to do with the uncomfortable feeling you can't quite identify. Or sitting in bed scrolling endlessly. Not reading anything. Not paying attention. Just moving your thumb across the screen. Because stillness is starting to feel dangerous. Because stillness creates space. And space creates awareness. And awareness is exactly what he's been avoiding. The irony is almost painful. He asked for space. Now space is the thing beginning to expose him. Not all at once. Gradually. One quiet evening at a time. One empty moment at a time. One missed connection at a time. The relief starts changing shape. That's the best way I can describe it. At first it feels light. Then it starts feeling hollow. And hollow is different. Relief relaxes the body. Hollowness lingers. Relief feels temporary. Hollowness follows you home. Relief helps you breathe. Hollowness makes you wonder why breathing feels harder than it should. He doesn't have language for it yet. Most people don't. He just knows something feels off. The peace he wanted isn't satisfying him the way he expected. The freedom feels strangely empty. The distance feels strangely permanent. And permanence changes everything. Because now he's beginning to confront a possibility he hadn't fully considered. What if she isn't just giving him space? What if she's actually leaving emotionally? What if this isn't temporary? What if she isn't waiting? That question alone can change everything. Because for months there was an assumption underneath all of it. An invisible assumption. She'll still be there. Maybe quieter. Maybe frustrated. Maybe tired. But there. Still available. Still reachable. Still emotionally invested. And now, for the first time, that assumption starts cracking. Not breaking. Cracking. Just enough to let uncertainty in. And uncertainty has a way of waking people up. Not instantly, but eventually. The relief begins fading. The silence changes flavor. The quiet changes meaning. The distance changes shape. What once felt peaceful starts feeling lonely. What once felt freeing starts feeling unsettling. What once felt like an escape starts feeling like a loss. And the strangest part, nothing dramatic has happened yet. No final goodbye. No dramatic confrontation. No grand ending. Just a growing awareness. A subtle ache. A feeling he can't fully explain. The realization that the absence of pressure is not the same thing as happiness. And that's where the story starts turning. Because the relief he trusted is beginning to betray him. The quiet he wanted is becoming difficult to sit inside. And somewhere in that silence, without fully understanding why, he's beginning to miss something he once thought he needed distance from. Not because he's suddenly transformed. Not because he's finally figured everything out. Just because reality is catching up. Slowly, awkwardly, humanly, the way it usually does. And what he doesn't realize yet is that this hollow feeling is only the beginning. Because the loss hasn't fully arrived. Not yet. But it's getting closer. And for the first time, he can feel it approaching. The strange thing about loss is that it rarely announces itself. It doesn't walk into the room and say, "Excuse me, your heart is finally catching up now." If it did, maybe life would be easier. Maybe people would stop making the mistakes they make. Maybe people would recognize what they are feeling before months pass. But that's not usually how it happens. At least not from what I've seen. Loss is sneaky. It enters through side doors. It disguises itself as ordinary moments. It arrives while you're doing completely unrelated things. Driving home, buying groceries, waiting at a red light, standing in line for coffee, folding laundry, looking for your keys. And suddenly, for reasons you can't explain, there she is. Not physically, but emotionally. A memory, a sentence, a laugh, a version of her that appears out of nowhere and refuses to leave. And what makes it so confusing is that these moments often begin long before he's willing to admit he misses her. That's the part nobody talks about. The body usually notices first. The mind catches up later. I remember hearing a man describe it once. He said he was leaving work one evening. Nothing unusual about the day. Meetings, emails, traffic, the normal exhaustion of adulthood. He got into his car, started driving, and at some point a song came on. Not even their song, just a random song. Something she used to play in the background while cooking. And suddenly his chest tightened. Just slightly. Not enough to ruin his evening. Not enough to make him cry. Just enough to make him uncomfortable. Enough to make him switch stations. Because sometimes that's what people do when emotions sneak up on them. They change the music, open another app, start another conversation, find another distraction. Anything except sit still long enough to understand what just happened. But the feeling stayed. And that was new. That's how these things begin. Not with understanding. With interruption. A small emotional interruption. A crack in the story he's been telling himself. The story that says everything is fine. The story that says distance was the right choice. The story that says he's moved on. The story that says he doesn't need anything from her. Then suddenly a song exists. And the story gets a little harder to believe. I think about all the ordinary moments that become emotionally loaded after someone starts disappearing. A restaurant, a parking lot, a coffee cup, a certain street, a particular joke. Things that meant absolutely nothing before. Things that now feel connected to her somehow. It's strange. The human brain turns people into geography, into routines, into objects, into sounds. And once that happens, forgetting becomes much harder than expected. He isn't thinking about her constantly. That's the misconception. People imagine longing as this non-stop obsession. Often it isn't. Often it's random, scattered, unpredictable. He can go 3 days without thinking about her, then suddenly spend 30 minutes staring out a window because he remembered something stupid she said 6 months ago. Something that wasn't even important. Especially the things that weren't important. That's what surprises people. The memories that hurt aren't always the dramatic ones. Sometimes they're painfully ordinary. The way she mispronounced a word. The way she laughed at her own jokes. The way she always forgot where she parked. The way she sent photos of random dogs she saw on the street. The tiny details. The details nobody thinks they're going to miss. Until they do. And by then it's too late. One memory becomes 10. 10 become 50. Then suddenly she's appearing in places she isn't even present. I think one of the loneliest experiences is when someone begins existing inside your routine after they've stopped existing inside your life. Because routines don't update immediately. The body remembers. The habits remember. The expectations remember. Long after reality has changed. He reaches for his phone during lunch. Not consciously, just automatically. For a second he wants to send her something, then remembers. That option no longer feels available. Or maybe technically it's available, but emotionally isn't. And that's worse. Because now he has to feel the interruption. The moment where instinct collides with reality. Again and again. Small losses. Tiny griefs. Repeated dozens of times. Nobody talks about how exhausting those moments become. The constant reminders. The little corrections. The internal voice saying, "Oh right, she's not here. Oh right, things are different now. Oh right, that part is gone." And every time it happens, something sinks a little deeper. Not dramatically, just enough. I remember another story. A man was shopping for groceries. Completely normal evening. Nothing emotional. Nothing significant. Then he walked past a display of those ridiculous flavored coffees she used to buy. The expensive ones he always made fun of. And without thinking he picked one up. Actually smiled. Because he already knew what joke he was going to send her. Then reality arrived. And he just stood there, holding the coffee, looking at it longer than necessary, feeling something he couldn't quite explain. Not devastation, not heartbreak, just absence, pure absence. And somehow absence can hurt more than sadness. Because sadness at least feels active. Absence feels empty. It gives you nothing to do, nothing to fix, nothing to solve. Just space where someone used to be. I think that's when many men start getting confused. Because now they're experiencing feelings that don't fit the narrative they've been using. The relief from earlier chapters is gone. The peace doesn't feel peaceful anymore. The distance doesn't feel empowering anymore. Now there's a quiet ache moving through ordinary moments. And ordinary moments happen every day. Which means the reminders never completely stop. The dangerous thing about emotional reality is that it accumulates. One memory is manageable. 100 memories create pressure. One moment of missing her is easy to dismiss. Months of missing tiny pieces of her become harder. The mind starts asking questions. Questions he wasn't asking before. Questions he actively avoided before. What happened? Why does everything feel different? Why am I thinking about her now? Why wasn't I thinking about her then? That last question can be brutal. Because hindsight is cruel. Hindsight notices things the present version couldn't see. And sometimes that's where regret begins. Not fully. Not yet. Just the earliest version of it. The first flickers. The first uncomfortable realizations. The first moments where honesty starts becoming unavoidable. I think about late nights a lot, because nighttime is where many emotional defenses fail. The world gets quieter. The distractions run out. Friends stop texting. Work stops demanding attention. The television becomes background noise. And suddenly there is space. Real space. The kind that allows thoughts to finish themselves. He's lying in bed, phone in hand, scrolling, not reading anything, just scrolling, the way people do when they're trying not to think. Then somehow her profile appears. Maybe intentionally, maybe accidentally. Who knows anymore? He tells himself he's just curious, just checking, just looking. No big deal. But then he stays longer than he planned. Looking at photos, looking at dates, looking at comments, trying to reconstruct a feeling he couldn't access before. And the strangest thing happens. Relief and grief begin existing together at the same time. Because humans are contradictory, he still remembers why he needed distance. Those reasons haven't disappeared, but now he's remembering what the distance cost. And both realities exist simultaneously. That's what makes this phase so confusing. Part of him still wants freedom. Part of him misses connection. Part of him wants to move forward. Part of him keeps looking backward. Part of him thinks reaching out would be a mistake. Part of him is already imagining the conversation. The mind argues. The heart interrupts. The ego explains. The loneliness disagrees. And somewhere inside all that noise, a conversation starts. A private conversation. The kind nobody hears. The kind people only have with themselves at 2 a.m. Do you actually miss her? Silence. I don't know. Really. More silence. Then eventually, double quotes. Yes. Her. Or the attention. The comfort. The familiarity. A long pause. Then the answer nobody wants. Both. Because emotional truth is rarely clean. That's what makes it believable. Sometimes he misses her. Sometimes he misses how she made him feel. Sometimes he misses being understood. Sometimes he misses being wanted. Sometimes he misses the version of himself that existed when she was still emotionally present. And sorting through all that takes time. More time than people expect. Which is why these random moments become so important. They're not random at all. They're evidence. Evidence that reality is finally breaking through. Evidence that his emotional defenses are weakening. Evidence that the loss he avoided is beginning to arrive. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just through 100 tiny moments. A song. A coffee cup. A parking lot. A voice that sounds vaguely like hers. A joke he can't send. A memory he can't stop replaying. A habit that still reaches for someone who isn't reaching back anymore. And eventually those moments start connecting. Like dots on a page. At first they seem unrelated. Then suddenly a picture emerges. And the picture says something he isn't quite ready to hear. Something his body already knows. Something his routines already know. Something his late night thoughts already know. The truth. He didn't lose her all at once. But now, for the first time, he's beginning to feel the loss. And once that feeling starts showing up everywhere, it becomes much harder to keep pretending it isn't there. One of the most frustrating things about human beings is that we can feel something deeply and spend months arguing against it. Not because we're dishonest. Not exactly. Because accepting certain truths creates consequences. And consequences are uncomfortable, especially when those consequences require us to admit that maybe, just maybe, we were wrong, are careless, are scared, or asleep at the wheel of our own lives. So before acceptance comes, there's usually negotiation, a long period of negotiation. And this is where he finds himself now, because the memories have started appearing. The empty moments have started accumulating. The relief is gone. The silence feels different. Something inside him knows that. Something inside him has already noticed. But another part is still trying to explain everything away. I think most people imagine denial as something obvious, like standing in front of reality and refusing to see it. In real life, it's usually much subtler than that. It sounds like, maybe she's just busy. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe I don't actually miss her. Maybe this is just loneliness. Maybe I'm having a rough week. Maybe it's nothing. The word maybe becomes a hiding place, a way to delay certainty, a way to avoid looking directly at what is happening. Because certainty demands action, and certainty allows procrastination. And procrastination can last a surprisingly long time. I remember someone telling me about a period after a relationship had begun slipping away. Every few days he'd find himself checking her social media. Not obsessively. At least that's what he told himself. Just casually. Just curiosity. Just passing time. Nothing meaningful. Except he checked every day. Sometimes twice. Sometimes 5 times. And that's the thing about rationalization. People rarely listen to what they do. They listen to what they say. His behavior was telling a very different story than his explanations. His explanation said, I don't really care. His action said, then why are you here again? I think we've all had moments like that. Moments where our habits expose emotions our words refuse to acknowledge. Because behavior is difficult to lie with. You can explain something away. You can intellectualize it. You can create beautiful theories. But eventually your actions start leaving clues. The body keeps receipts. And his body is beginning to tell on him. He's checking his phone more often. Not because she's messaging. Because she isn't. He's noticing her absence in conversations. He's comparing new interactions to old ones. He's replaying memories. Replaying specific conversations. Specific moments. Specific looks. And what's strange is that the mind rarely chooses the moments you'd expect. It doesn't always replay the romantic milestones. Sometimes it chooses something completely insignificant. A random Tuesday. A stupid joke. A 5-minute conversation in a parking lot. The way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention. Tiny moments. Tiny moments become dangerous once regret enters the room. Because regret feeds on details. I remember driving late one night years ago. Not because of a breakup. Just because I couldn't sleep. The roads were almost empty. Streetlights reflecting on the windshield. The kind of night where your thoughts get louder than they should. And I remember realizing something uncomfortable. When people start missing someone, they often become detectives. Searching through memory for evidence. Evidence that the connection mattered. Evidence that they mattered. Evidence that what happened was real. That's what he's doing now. Whether he realizes it or not. He's investigating the past. Reviewing footage. Looking for answers. And every answer creates more questions. Maybe she was more important than I admitted. Maybe she was trying harder than I realized. Maybe I misunderstood what was happening. Maybe. The mind keeps circling. Because certainty is getting closer. And certainty feels dangerous. There are moments when he almost accepts it. Almost. Then the ego pulls him back. not maliciously, protectively. The ego doesn't necessarily care about truth. It cares about survival, about self-image, about avoiding pain. And admitting the truth creates pain. Because the truth starts sounding like this. You knew she was pulling away. You just didn't think she'd actually leave. You knew she was tired. You just assumed she'd recover. You knew she wanted more. You just believed there would always be more time. That's difficult. Very difficult. Because now we're entering territory where self-awareness and regret begin overlapping. And people don't like that territory. I think one of the most human behaviors in the world is wanting the emotional reality without wanting the emotional responsibility. Wanting someone to care. Wanting someone to stay. Wanting someone to understand. Without fully recognizing what maintaining that connection requires. And that's not a criticism. It's an observation. Human beings are full of contradictions. He wants her presence, but sometimes resisted vulnerability. He wanted her understanding, but sometimes withheld honesty. He wanted her patience, but sometimes tested its limits. That's what makes this phase so messy. Nothing is clean anymore. Not his feelings, not his memories, not his explanations. Everything starts colliding. One night he tells himself he's moving on. The next night he's rereading old messages. One morning he feels fine. That evening a memory ruins his concentration for 2 hours. One day he convinces himself he doesn't need closure. The next day he imagines conversations that will probably never happen. It's embarrassing and deeply human. The truth is, people become emotionally inconsistent when reality starts catching up to them, especially when they weren't prepared for it. I keep thinking about a particular image. A man sitting at his kitchen table, phone face down, coffee getting cold, doing absolutely nothing, not working, not watching television, not listening to music, just sitting there. And every few minutes his eyes drift toward the phone, then away, then back again. Not because he's expecting a message, because he's hoping something inside him will become clearer. But clarity rarely arrives like that. Usually it arrives through repetition. The same thought appearing over and over until you can't dismiss it anymore. The same feeling showing up every day. The same absence making itself known. Again, and again, and again, until denial becomes exhausting. And that's what's happening now. The explanations are losing power. The rationalizations are becoming harder to believe. Because reality keeps interrupting them. If he doesn't care, why does he keep thinking about her? If it wasn't meaningful, why is he replaying it? If he's completely moved on, why does every reminder still create a reaction? The questions are getting harder. The answers are getting more obvious. And obvious answers are exactly what he's been trying to avoid. There is a private conversation happening inside him now. One he probably wouldn't say out loud. One that sounds something like this. You're overreacting. Am I? Probably. Then why am I still thinking about her? Silence. It's just loneliness. Okay. Then why does every memory feel so specific? More silence. You miss the attention. Maybe. Then why do I keep remembering her laugh? Why do I remember that one conversation? Why do I remember the way she looked at me when I was struggling? Why do I remember things that have nothing to do with attention? The silence gets longer, because eventually even the ego runs out of arguments. Not completely, but enough. Enough for the truth to start slipping through. And the truth isn't dramatic. Truth rarely is. The truth is usually quiet, uncomfortable, specific, It sounds like, I thought there would be more time. I thought she'd keep trying. I thought things would fix themselves. I thought I could figure it out later. I thought she'd understand. I thought she'd wait. That last one can hurt. Because so many people secretly build emotional decisions around the assumption that someone will keep waiting. Not forever. Just a little longer. A few more weeks. A few more months. One more conversation. One more chance. And often they don't realize they're making that assumption until it stops being true. That's where he is now. Standing in the gap between what he assumed and what is actually happening. Still resisting. Still negotiating. Still explaining. But less confidently than before. Because something has changed. The evidence is becoming impossible to ignore. The random memories. The late-night thoughts. The empty spaces. The repeated checking. The conversations he keeps replaying. The growing awareness that she is no longer reaching for him the way she once did. His ego is still trying to protect him. Still trying to soften the impact. Still trying to create alternative explanations. But deep down, somewhere beneath all the noise, he's beginning to understand something. Something uncomfortable. Something that changes the entire story. This isn't just loneliness. It isn't boredom. It isn't curiosity. It isn't a temporary emotional slump. It's loss. Real loss. And the closer he gets to admitting that, the harder it becomes to look away. Because once loss has a name, it starts demanding honesty. And honesty is exactly what he's running out of places to hide from. I don't think the realization happens the way people imagine. There isn't always some dramatic scene. No thunderstorm. No cinematic goodbye. No moment where he suddenly falls to his knees and understands everything. Real life is usually less dramatic than that. And somehow more painful. Because sometimes the realization arrives in a way that's almost impossible to explain. He doesn't suddenly realize she's gone. He realizes she's no longer reaching. And those are not the same thing. For a long time, he confused her presence with her energy. Most people do. Presence is easy to recognize. A person answers the phone. A person responds to messages. A person still exists in your world. Energy is different. Energy is the warmth underneath those things. The willingness. The investment. The emotional leaning toward you. The invisible current that keeps connection alive. And when that current disappears, everything changes. Even if technically nothing has changed at all. I remember hearing someone describe it like this. He said, "She was still talking to me, but somehow it felt like she wasn't there anymore." That sentence stayed with me because I knew exactly what he meant. And maybe you do too. The messages still came. Occasionally, the conversations still happened. Sometimes, but the emotional atmosphere had changed. The feeling was gone. The effort was gone. The anticipation was gone. The eagerness was gone. And suddenly, he found himself facing something he had spent months refusing to see. She wasn't waiting anymore. That's the realization. Not that she disappeared. That she stopped waiting. And for some reason, that hits differently. Maybe because waiting contains hope. Waiting implies possibility. Waiting says, I'm still emotionally invested in an outcome. When that disappears, something inside the relationship changes permanently. I think that's why this stage feels so unsettling. Because for the first time, he begins understanding what was actually holding everything together. Not the relationship status. Not the conversations. Not the labels. Her energy. Her willingness. Her effort. Her hope. And here's the uncomfortable truth. A lot of people don't recognize emotional labor until it stops. Not because they're selfish, because consistency becomes invisible. When someone shows up every day, eventually you stop noticing they're showing up. You just assume they'll continue until they don't. Then suddenly you see everything. Too late. I remember a man describing a conversation he had after months of emotional distance. He finally reached out. Not because he was fully ready. Not because he had all the answers. Just because something inside him couldn't ignore the loss anymore. So he sent a message. Simple. Nothing dramatic. And she replied. Politely. Kindly. Respectfully. There was nothing wrong with her response. That was the problem. Nothing was wrong. But nothing was there either. No emotional pull. No hidden invitation. No warmth reaching toward him. No feeling that she had been waiting for that message. Just a response. A normal response. And he said reading it felt worse than being ignored. Because for the first time he understood something. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't hurt anymore. She wasn't chasing answers anymore. She had stopped emotionally orbiting around him. And somehow, that hurt more than conflict ever did. Conflict still creates connection. People rarely admit that. Arguments can be exhausting, frustrating, painful. But conflict often means someone still cares enough to engage. Indifference is different. Indifference doesn't fight. Indifference doesn't negotiate. Indifference simply releases. And that's terrifying when you're finally beginning to care. Especially when you're finally beginning to understand. I think many men expect emotional consequences to arrive loudly. But often they arrive quietly. Through absence. Through contrast. Through comparison. He starts remembering how things used to feel. How she used to text. How she used to laugh. How she used to ask questions. How she used to reach out after disagreements. And suddenly the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. The version of her that loved him openly is gone. Not necessarily the love. The expression of it. The offering of it. The availability of it. And that distinction matters. Because people don't usually stop loving overnight. They stop extending themselves. They stop pouring. They stop carrying. And that's what he's finally seeing. Not her departure. Her exhaustion. Months later. Maybe even longer. The timing feels cruel. Because awareness has finally arrived. But now, awareness is looking at a closed door. Not an open one. I keep thinking about one image. A man sitting alone late at night. Phone in hand. Conversation open. Not typing. Just reading. Scrolling upward through old messages. Month after month. Back into a version of the relationship that no longer exists. And what's fascinating is where his attention goes. Not the romantic messages. Not the obvious declarations. The small things. The ordinary things. The effort. The consistency. The way she checked in. The way she remembered details. The way she kept trying to create connection. Those are the things he notices now. Because effort becomes visible when it's absent. And absence is becoming impossible to ignore. There is a private realization happening. One he probably doesn't say out loud. One that sounds something like, she really was trying. For a long time. Longer than I thought. Longer than I admitted. Longer than I appreciated. That realization hurts. Not because it's dramatic. Because it's specific. Specific realizations always hurt more. General regret is easy. Specific regret has weight. Specific regret has faces, dates, memories, missed opportunities. specific regret remembers exactly where you were standing, exactly what was said, exactly what you could have done differently. And suddenly moments he dismissed start replaying differently. That conversation she tried to have, that message he answered carelessly, that vulnerability he avoided, that emotional opening he postponed. Everything looks different now. Not because the memories changed, because his perspective did. And perspective can be brutal, especially when it arrives late. There's a conversation happening inside him now, not between him and her, between him and himself. A conversation that sounds almost uncomfortable in its honesty. You knew she was tired. Did I? Part of you did. Maybe. You knew she was pulling away. I thought she'd come back. Why? Long silence. Because she always did. And there it is. The assumption. The invisible assumption. The one that lived underneath everything. She'll come back. She'll understand. She'll reach out. She'll fix it. She'll stay. And now reality has shattered that assumption. Not violently. Quietly. The way reality usually does. One ordinary day at a time. Until eventually the truth becomes unavoidable. She's not reaching anymore. And for the first time, he understands how much of the connection depended on her willingness to do that. Not all of it, but enough. Enough that without it everything feels different. The emotional atmosphere has changed. The warmth has changed. The accessibility has changed. And most importantly, the certainty has changed. Because now he doesn't know. He doesn't know if she still wants him there. He doesn't know if she still cares. He doesn't know if she's moved on. He doesn't know whether reaching out would matter. And uncertainty has a way of exposing feelings people spent years hiding from themselves. The irony is painful. When she was emotionally available, he often felt overwhelmed. Now that she's unavailable, he feels the absence everywhere. When she was reaching toward him, he needed space. Now that she isn't reaching, all he can think about is the distance. When she was carrying hope for both of them, he had room to hesitate. Now she's carrying her hope somewhere else. Or maybe nowhere at all. And suddenly hesitation feels expensive. Very expensive. I think that's the moment. Not when he loses her. Not when she leaves. Not when communication stops. The moment he realizes her energy is gone. The moment he understands that the version of her who kept believing, kept trying, kept waiting, has changed. Maybe permanently. And something inside him breaks open. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just enough. Enough to finally see what was there. Enough to finally understand what was being offered. Enough to finally recognize the emotional labor that once felt invisible. And that's when the loss becomes real. Because now he's no longer grieving an idea. He's grieving a reality. The reality that someone spent months reaching toward him. And eventually became too tired to continue. The reality that love can survive longer than hope. The reality that people don't always leave because they stop caring. Sometimes they leave because caring became too painful. And the hardest part, by the time he truly understands that, she may already be learning how to live without the energy she once gave so freely. While he's finally waking up to what he lost, she's finally accepting that she had to let it go. And those two realizations rarely happen at the same time. That's what makes this chapter hurt. Not because it's tragic, because it's human. Painfully, frustratingly human. I don't think regret arrives the way movies teach us. In movies, regret is dramatic. A person realizes everything at once. Music swells. They run through an airport. They make a speech. they suddenly become the version of themselves they should have been all along. Real life is usually much less flattering. Regret often arrives awkwardly, late, uninvited, and with terrible timing. That's what nobody prepares you for. Not the pain of regret, the embarrassment of it, the humiliation of realizing something important months after everyone else already knew, including the person you hurt, especially the person you hurt. Because by the time he reaches this stage, something has shifted. The confusion is fading. The explanations are fading. The arguments with himself are fading. And what's left behind is much harder to escape. Specific memories, specific moments, specific choices, not dramatic mistakes. That's the worst part. Usually, it's not one catastrophic decision. It's 1,000 small ones. 1,000 moments that felt insignificant at the time. Now, they replay with brutal clarity. I remember a man once saying, "I wish she had done something terrible." That sounded horrible when I first heard it. Then he explained, if she had done something terrible, he could blame her. He could be angry. He could justify everything. Instead, what haunted him were the moments where she genuinely tried, and he simply wasn't present enough to recognize it. That kind of regret is harder, because it doesn't give you anyone to fight. It leaves you alone with yourself, and that's where he is now. Alone with himself, alone with memory, alone with details. Details are dangerous, because details don't let you hide behind generalizations. You can't tell yourself, it just wasn't meant to be. Not when you're replaying actual moments. Not when you're remembering specific conversations. Not when you're remembering the exact expression on her face. The exact pause in her voice. The exact message you never answered properly. Those memories have weight, and they get heavier with time. I think about all the moments that only become meaningful later. The moments people overlook because they assume there will be another opportunity, another conversation, another weekend, another chance to explain, another chance to show up differently. One memory keeps coming back. She's trying to tell him something important. Not dramatically, not accusing him, just trying to explain how she feels, trying to explain what she's struggling with, trying to explain what she needs. And while she's talking, he's half listening, not intentionally. He's tired, distracted, overwhelmed, thinking about work, thinking about something else, thinking about anything except the fact that this moment matters. At the time, it felt ordinary. Now it replays like evidence, because hindsight has a cruel habit of highlighting moments that once looked insignificant. The mind becomes a projector, playing old scenes over and over, not because it enjoys suffering, because it's trying to understand, trying to locate the turning point, trying to answer a question that no longer has an easy answer. When did I start losing her? That's the question. And unfortunately, there isn't usually one moment. There are many, which somehow hurts more. I think that's why regret becomes so exhausting. There's no single mistake to correct, no single apology to offer, no obvious solution, just a collection of missed opportunities. And missed opportunities are difficult to grieve because they exist in imagination. He isn't mourning what happened. He's mourning what could have happened, what he could have said, what he could have done, what he could have understood sooner. And imagination can be merciless. One night he's lying awake, staring at the ceiling, completely exhausted, but unable to sleep, because his mind has decided now is the perfect time to replay every conversation from the past year. Human brains love doing that. especially at 17 in the morning, especially when sleep would be far more useful. He remembers a message, a simple message, one he barely thought about when he received it. She wrote, "Can we talk when you have time?" Nothing dramatic, no emergency, no crisis, just a request. And he remembers how he responded. Later, maybe tomorrow, maybe this weekend. And technically he wasn't wrong. He was busy. Life was happening. He had responsibilities. But now he remembers how many tomorrows there were, how many weekends, how many opportunities, and suddenly later feels different, much different. The thing about regret is that it transforms ordinary words. Later becomes not now, eventually becomes maybe never. I'm fine becomes I gave up explaining. Everything changes meaning, not because the past changes, because awareness changes. I keep thinking about something that happens to many men during this stage. They begin remembering moments they dismissed, moments they actively minimized, moments that seem small, and suddenly those moments become impossible to ignore. The night she seemed unusually quiet, the day she stopped arguing, the week she stopped asking questions, the period where she became noticeably more independent. At the time, those changes felt convenient. Now they look heartbreaking, because now he understands what they actually represented. Not peace, fatigue, not acceptance, exhaustion, not emotional stability, resignation. And that realization lands hard, harder than expected, because nobody wants to discover that they misunderstood someone's pain, especially not after it's too late to fix it. There is a private conversation happening again, only now it's more honest, more uncomfortable, more specific. You knew something was wrong. I knew she seemed different. And I thought she'd tell me if it was serious. A pause. Didn't she? Long silence. The kind of silence that answers the question without words. Because that's often what regret discovers. The truth wasn't hidden. It was simply inconvenient, or uncomfortable, or badly timed, or difficult to face. And unfortunately, human beings are experts at postponing difficult truths until those truths become losses. Then suddenly we're willing to examine everything. It's frustrating, almost absurd. The timing of self-awareness is one of life's cruelest jokes. I think about all the little acts of love people overlook. The small ones. The ones that don't feel extraordinary until they're gone. The check-in texts. The concern. The patience. The repeated attempts to reconnect. The willingness to start over after arguments. The benefit of the doubt. The emotional generosity. These things seem endless while they're happening. Then one day they stop. And suddenly they look priceless. That's where he is now, looking backward. Not because he wants to live in the past, because the past keeps revealing things he couldn't see before. Every memory contains new information. Every memory contains another clue, another piece of the puzzle, another reminder that she tried longer than he realized. And that's what hurts. Not the idea that she cared, the evidence that she cared. Evidence is harder to argue with. Evidence creates accountability, and accountability creates regret. The ugly kind, the kind nobody posts about, the kind that doesn't make you look wise, the kind that makes you sit in your car after work for 20 minutes doing absolutely nothing, the kind that makes you clean your apartment at midnight because emotional overwhelm needs somewhere to go. The kind that makes you open a conversation thread and stare at it without typing. The kind that makes you whisper, "Damn," not because you've had some profound revelation, Because you finally understand something obvious. And obvious truths often hurt the most. I think one of the hardest realizations is this. Sometimes people know better. Sometimes they don't. And sometimes they know. And still do nothing. Not because they're evil. Not because they don't care. Because fear is powerful. Avoidance is powerful. Confusion is powerful. Immaturity is powerful. And unfortunately, consequences don't wait for personal growth. That's another painful truth. Life doesn't pause while we figure ourselves out. People get tired. People leave. People heal. People move on. Even while we're still processing. Even while we're still understanding. Even while we're still becoming aware. And that's where regret becomes truly painful. Because awareness has finally arrived. But it arrived late. Very late. The pieces have finally connected. The picture finally makes sense. The emotional math finally adds up. And now, he's left staring at a reality he spent months avoiding. She wasn't asking for perfection. She wasn't demanding impossible things. Most of the time, she was simply asking him to meet her halfway. To notice. To engage. To participate. To care visibly. And now he understands that. Completely. Painfully. Too late. Or at least it feels too late. Because regret has a way of convincing people that every missed opportunity was the last opportunity. Whether that's true or not. And as he sits with all of this, the memories, the details, the conversations, the delayed realizations, another question begins emerging. A question he can no longer avoid. If he finally understands what he lost, what is he going to do about it? Because regret can only sit still for so long. Eventually, it becomes something else. A desire to reach out. A desire to explain. A desire to reconnect. A desire to see whether the door is truly closed. And that's where the next chapter begins. Not with certainty. Not with courage. Not with wisdom. Just a man standing in the aftermath of his own delayed understanding. Wondering whether he realized everything too late. I think one of the biggest misunderstandings about relationships is the idea that people come back because they've finally figured everything out. As if one day they wake up transformed. Emotionally evolved, completely healed, suddenly clear about what they want. That sounds nice. It's also rarely how it happens. Most of the time, when he comes back, he's still confused, still imperfect, still carrying some of the same fears that made him pull away in the first place. The difference is that now something else has become stronger. The loss, the awareness, the reality of what life feels like without her energy in it. And eventually, the reality becomes difficult to ignore. I wish I could tell you this process is noble. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it isn't. Human beings are messy. And people rarely return for one reason. Usually there are several reasons happening at the same time. Some beautiful. Some selfish. Some honest. Some confusing, all mixed together. That's what makes it human. I remember talking to someone who had spent nearly a year convincing himself he needed distance. Distance to think, distance to grow, distance to figure things out. Then one evening he admitted something. Not to her, to himself. And it was painfully simple. He said, "I don't think the distance taught me what I thought it would." That sentence stayed with me. Because what he expected was clarity. What he found was absence. And absence is a very different teacher. Distance didn't solve everything. Distance removed the noise. And once the noise disappeared, he could finally hear his own feelings. Feelings he had been outrunning for months. Maybe years. The irony is almost funny. The thing he wanted to escape ended up being the thing he missed. Not every part of it. That's important. Because people love turning stories into absolutes. He didn't suddenly think every problem disappeared. He didn't suddenly forget every frustration. He didn't suddenly become a different person. Part of him still felt overwhelmed. Part of him still feared intimacy. Part of him still worried about vulnerability. Part of him still wanted to run. That's the truth nobody likes talking about. The fear doesn't always disappear when love becomes clear. Sometimes they grow together. Sometimes he misses her deeply and still feels terrified of what reconnecting would require. Both things can be true. Human beings are fully capable of wanting something and fearing it at the exact same time. I've seen it happen countless times. Maybe you have too. The phone is right there. The message could be sent in 30 seconds. And yet somehow 3 weeks pass. Not because he doesn't care. Because caring creates risk. And risk creates hesitation. I think about all those moments. The absurdly human moments. The moments nobody posts online because they don't sound impressive. Like sitting on the edge of the bed at midnight. Opening her profile. Closing it. Opening it again. Reading old conversations. Typing a message. Deleting it. Typing another one. Deleting that too. Not because he doesn't know what to say. Because every version sounds wrong. Too casual. Too emotional. Too late. Too much. Too little. The mind becomes impossible. Every sentence feels loaded. Every word feels important. And when words feel important, people become afraid of them. Especially people who already struggle with vulnerability. The internal conversation starts again. Only now it's louder. You should reach out. Should I? You miss her. I know. Then do something. What if she doesn't respond? Silence. What if she's moved on? More silence. What if I hurt her too much? And there it is. The question hiding underneath everything. Not whether he misses her. Whether he still has access to her. Those are very different fears. Because missing someone is painful. Realizing they may no longer be available to you is terrifying. Especially when you spent months assuming they would be. And I think that's why many men come back. Not because they suddenly become enlightened. Because reality finally catches up. Reality has a way of stripping away emotional illusions. The illusion that there will always be more time. The illusion that people can wait forever. The illusion that connection survives indefinitely without participation. Eventually, reality arrives and says, no, there were consequences. There was a cost. And now you have to face it. Sometimes that reality arrives through loneliness. Sometimes through maturity. Sometimes through comparison. That's another uncomfortable truth. Sometimes he meets other people. And instead of forgetting her, he understands her. Not because the new people are bad. Because contrast creates clarity. The little things become visible. The emotional safety. The patience. The effort. The understanding. The consistency. Things he once treated like background noise suddenly become rare. And rarity changes value. That's human nature. We notice things differently when they're no longer guaranteed. I remember someone describing a moment that felt almost embarrassingly ordinary. He was sick. Nothing serious. Just one of those miserable weekends where your body feels heavy and your apartment feels too quiet. And he realized something. The person he wanted to text wasn't there anymore. Not because she couldn't be. Because he had spent so much time creating distance that he no longer knew whether he had the right. That realization hit harder than he expected. Not because he needed medical attention, because vulnerability exposes emotional truth. And when people feel vulnerable, they often stop performing. The pretending becomes harder. The defenses become thinner. The real feelings rise to the surface. That's when many men finally admit it. Not to anyone else. To themselves. I miss her. Simple sentence. Huge consequence. Because once that sentence becomes honest, action starts becoming difficult to avoid. Not guaranteed, but difficult to avoid. The problem is that regret and fear now exist together. And fear doesn't disappear just because love becomes clearer. If anything, fear sometimes becomes stronger. Because now there's something meaningful at stake. Now rejection is possible. Now disappointment is possible. Now accountability is possible. He might have to explain himself. He might have to admit things. He might have to face the version of himself he spent months avoiding. That's intimidating. Very intimidating. I think people underestimate how frightening accountability can feel. Not because accountability is bad, because accountability removes excuses. And excuses are comfortable. Excuses protect the ego. Truth doesn't. The truth says, you knew she mattered. You just didn't act like it. The truth says, she wasn't impossible to love. You were afraid of what loving her required. The truth says, you weren't waiting for certainty. You were waiting to avoid risk. Those truths sting, especially when they arrive late. So he hesitates. Of course he hesitates. Anyone would. Part of him wants to reconnect. Part of him wants to protect himself. Part of him wants forgiveness. Part of him doesn't believe he deserves it. Part of him imagines a second chance. Part of him imagines silence. This is what nobody talks about when discussing why people come back. Coming back isn't usually a confident process. It's awkward, messy, filled with doubt, filled with false starts, filled with unsent messages. People imagine courage as certainty. Sometimes courage is just acting while uncertain. And uncertainty is exactly where he lives now. I keep imagining one scene. A simple scene. Nothing dramatic. A man sitting alone in his car after work. Rain tapping lightly against the windshield. Phone in his hand. Heart moving faster than it should. Reading the message one last time. A message that's probably too long or too short, depending on which version of himself is judging it. He reads it, deletes a sentence, adds another, reads it again, then sits there, frozen, because once he sends it, reality begins. And reality is scary. Hope is easy when it's imaginary. Hope becomes terrifying when it can actually be tested. The truth is, many people think he comes back because he finally knows. But often he comes back because he finally feels. The emotional reality he spent months outrunning has caught him. The distance stopped protecting him. The silence stopped comforting him. The absence stopped feeling temporary. And somewhere inside all of that, a realization formed. Not a perfect realization. Not a complete one. Just an honest one. Life without her energy feels very different than he expected. The woman he thought would always be there is no longer standing in the same place. And for the first time, he understands what that means. Which is why he comes back. Not because he has become flawless. Not because he has solved every emotional problem. Not because he suddenly has all the answers. He comes back because the emotional truth finally became stronger than the emotional avoidance. And for a man who spent a long time running from his feelings, that is a much bigger shift than it sounds. The question now isn't whether he understands. The question is whether understanding arrived in time. Because while he's finally gathering the courage to turn around, she may already be walking in the opposite direction. And that's the reality waiting for him in the final chapter. Not certainty. Timing. And timing can be far more painful than regret. This chapter intentionally avoids portraying his return as a heroic transformation. Instead, it presents it as a messy collision between longing, accountability, fear, vulnerability, and delayed emotional awareness, setting up Chapter 10, where the central tragedy is not love, but timing. I think one of the most painful things I've ever realized about relationships is that love isn't always what breaks them. Sometimes timing does. And timing is cruel because nobody can point at it. Nobody can blame it properly. Nobody can argue with it. It doesn't give you a villain. It doesn't give you closure. It just leaves to people standing in different emotional seasons, wondering how they missed each other. That's what this story has really been about all along. Not love, not loss, not even regret. Timing. Because by the time he finally understands what happened, she has usually been understanding it for a very long time. That's the part that hurts. Not that he woke up. That he woke up late. And I don't say that with judgment. I say it with sadness. Because I think many people have lived some version of this. One person is still trying. The other is still avoiding. One person is grieving. The other is still distracted. One person is slowly letting go. The other still believes there's more time. And somehow they trade places. By the time he reaches for her, she has finally stopped reaching for him. By the time he wants the conversation, she no longer needs it. By the time he finds clarity, she has already survived the confusion. It's almost unbearable when you think about it. Not because anyone intended it, because that's often how emotional timelines work. They're rarely synchronized. I remember hearing a woman describe it once. She said, "When he finally called, I wasn't angry anymore." Something about that sentence broke my heart. Not because she had moved on, because she had moved through. There's a difference. Moving on sounds clean. Moving through sounds human. Messy. Painful. Slow. She didn't wake up one morning healed. She cried. Questioned herself. Overthought everything. Checked her phone. Waited. Hoped. Got disappointed. Hoped again. Then eventually, something changed. Not dramatically. Quietly. The way most important things change. And by the time he finally understood her value, she had already spent months learning how to live without his consistency, or without his certainty, or without his presence. Whatever it was she had needed from him, she learned how to carry the weight herself. And that's what makes timing so brutal. Healing creates distance too. People talk about distance as something physical. It's not always. Sometimes distance is created by growth. Sometimes distance is created by acceptance. Sometimes distance is created because one person finally stopped waiting. I think that's what many men don't anticipate. They imagine she'll still be standing in the same emotional place where they left her. Still hoping. Still wondering. Still available. But people change while we're not paying attention. Especially people who have been forced to survive disappointment. Especially people who have spent months rebuilding themselves. And rebuilding changes people. Not always visibly. Sometimes quietly. Internally. She laughs a little differently now. Thinks differently. Protects her peace differently. Responds differently. Not because she's trying to punish him. Because experience altered her. And by the time he comes back, he isn't always meeting the same version of her. That's the reality. The version that waited may not exist anymore. I keep thinking about a particular image. A woman sitting alone months earlier, crying in her car after another disappointing conversation, trying to understand him, trying to justify him, trying to be patient, trying to stay hopeful. Now, imagine that same woman months later. Same car, same parking lot, same life. But something is different. The tears are gone. Not because she's happier, because she's accepted something. Acceptance doesn't always look joyful. Sometimes it just looks calm. And calm can be very confusing to people who arrive late. Because late arrivals expect intensity. They expect anger. They expect emotion. They expect evidence that they still matter. What they sometimes find instead is peace. And peace can feel devastating when you finally want access again. I think that's one of the hardest truths in relationships. Sometimes the person who loved you most becomes the person who finally chooses themselves. And if you've never watched that happen, it's difficult to explain. Because it isn't dramatic. It's quiet. The texts become less emotional. The waiting disappears. The chasing disappears. The constant availability disappears. And eventually she becomes emotionally unavailable in the exact way he once was. Not intentionally. Not maliciously. Just naturally. Because she adapted. Human beings adapt. Even to heartbreak. Especially to heartbreak. That's what survival is. I imagine him staring at a message. A real message. Maybe one he has finally decided to send. Maybe one he already sent. Maybe one she answered. Maybe one she didn't. And for the first time, he understands something he never understood before. The outcome isn't entirely his decision anymore. That realization can feel shocking. Because for so long he had options. Time. Possibility. Flexibility. Now reality has its own voice. Now her choices matter too. Now her healing matters too. Now her boundaries matter too. And that's where many people encounter genuine humility. Not spiritual humility. Human humility. The realization that another person's life did not stop while you were figuring yourself out. Their days continued. Their healing continued. Their loneliness continued. Their growth continued. Without you. That's difficult to sit with. Especially when you're only now understanding the depth of what was offered. I think about the private conversations people have with themselves after midnight. The honest ones. The ones nobody hears. Maybe it sounds something like this. I finally understand. Do you? I think so. Then why does it hurt? Because I didn't before. A pause. Another pause. Then the real question. What if I'm too late? And there it is. The question hiding underneath everything. Not whether he loves her. Not whether she loved him. Whether understanding arrived after the window had already closed. Because life doesn't always reward realization. Sometimes realization arrives as a lesson, not a reunion. That's painful, but it's real. And honestly, I think that's why these stories affect people so deeply. Because they're not really about romance. They're about recognition. The delayed recognition of someone's value. The delayed recognition of effort. The delayed recognition of love. And delayed recognition carries consequences. Not because life is cruel. Because actions have timelines. Opportunities have timelines. People have limits. Even patient people. Even loving people. Even hopeful people. Especially hopeful people. Hope gets tired. Eventually. I wish there were a cleaner ending. A more satisfying one. A version where he always comes back and everything works out. Or a version where she always moves on and never looks back. But real life isn't that neat. Sometimes they reconnect. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they meet again years later and barely recognize the people they used to be. Sometimes they build something new. Sometimes they simply carry the lesson forward. What I've learned is that certainty isn't always available. And maybe that's okay. Because certainty isn't the point. Honesty is. And the honest truth is that many men do come back. Not because they suddenly become perfect. Not because they suddenly possess all the answers. Because loss eventually teaches them what presence could not. Because absence eventually reveals what familiarity concealed. Because sometimes people only understand the value of emotional consistency after they experience life without it. But another honest truth exists too. Sometimes the woman they return to is no longer standing in the same place. Not because she stopped caring, because she finally stopped waiting. And there's something profoundly heartbreaking about that. To people, to emotional journeys, to different clocks. One finally arriving, the other finally leaving. Not out of cruelty, not out of revenge, simply because life kept moving. I think that's the image that stays with me. Not the reunion, not the separation. A man sitting alone with an old conversation open on his phone, scrolling upward, month after month, reading messages he once skimmed, reading words he once rushed past, finding meaning in places where he once saw ordinary conversation, and eventually stopping at a single message. A message that seemed completely unimportant when it arrived. A message he barely thought about. Now he stares at it for a long time. Not because he doesn't know what to say, but because he finally understands what he should have said months ago. Back when she was still reaching. Back when she was still hoping. Back when timing was still on his side. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all. Sometimes love survives. Sometimes regret survives. Sometimes memories survive. But timing doesn't. Timing keeps moving, whether we're ready or not. And by the time some people finally understand what they had, they're no longer deciding whether to keep it. They're simply learning what it feels like to have lasted. And maybe that's why these stories stay with us. Because somewhere deep down, all of us know how human that is. How painfully human. How ordinary. How real. And how often the heart arrives just a little later than it wishes it had. This final chapter closes the narrative with unresolved emotional honesty rather than certainty, emphasizing the central theme that the greatest tragedy is not necessarily the loss of love, but the misalignment of emotional timing, where one person finally understands just as the other finally lets go.
Thank you for spending this moment with me. If this message resonated with your soul, remember to subscribe and continue this journey with us here on Twin Flame Journey. And always remember, what is meant for your soul will always find its way back to you. Until next time, beautiful soul, trust the journey.